Hello again, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode number 14 of This Week in History. It's Thursday afternoon, it's 12 o'clock. Hopefully you're enjoying some trip down memory lane along with your lunch today. And we want to thank you for joining us, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or listening to us on audio version on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere you get your podcasts from. We are part of the Ontario Independent Wrestling Podcast Network and the Johners Podcasting Network over in the UK. So we have a lot to look at this week. We're going to see a couple more uncensored, a little controversy with those and not being uncensored or being censored for a show that's that. A couple of WrestleManias are going to pop up, and of course, some lovely DUIs. So we'll see what all happens, but we can't do that until we bring in Jonesy in Niagara Falls, the guy who brings all this together. How are you today, Jonesy?
I'm doing fantastic. That was a great introduction to this week in wrestling history.
Yeah, well, I got the pictures in front of me, and people can see my computer screen. I got the spot where the videos are, but then up above are the overlays that I have to scroll back to the first one. But the first overlay that I'm seeing right now is one of our last ones, and it's involving Kurt Angle and his DUI.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that popped into my mind, and I also saw Matt Hardy and Rebby Hardy. So we'll scroll back up the line as I do that and get to our first one. But how are you, anyways? Everything's Niagara.
I'm not doing too bad. Having some housing issues, mold and stuff like that. So,
Never a good
having
situation.
a good time.
Yeah, and things are hoping to get started with construction in my house. I just wish I could get contractors to call me back. I have money. I want to give it to them. I want them to do work for me, but they don't seem to want to put the connection together. I don't get it, but we're here. We're having fun, and we're talking wrestling history. So I love it. It's my escape from sort of reality and everything else that's going on beyond the show. So if you're ready to go, we
Indeed.
can start.
So we're going to start at March 19th. 78 years ago, El Santo defeated Marcelo Velquez to win the Mexican National Middleweight Championship for the very first time. 32 years ago in Tokyo, the AJW would crown a new champion after Erika Shihito defeated Manami Toyota to win the vacated AJW Singles Championship title. Shishito would go on to great fame in Japan as AJ Kong. The championship was vacated a month earlier when reigning champion Mika Komatsu retired. At that time, AJW had a mandatory retirement age of 26 for all its roster members.
Yeah, Aja Kong has been around for quite a long while. I was so surprised when you had her in here, and she started under her real name and then became Aja Kong, because I remember her being part of the Survivor Series against Alundra Blaze's team. Not that there were many people available, but they were going to have the women's division that way. I thought I heard a rumor that they were going to put Aja Kong against Alundra Blaze. I was going to say WrestleMania or something like that. But then all of a sudden, that whole deal with the women in Japan ended. And next thing you know, they released Alundra Blaze, or Medusa, as we definitely know her. And they forgot to get the title off her, and we saw the dumping of the belt in the trash. But it was supposed to be a program with Aja Kong.
Yep, but they trashed the whole thing, and at that time the women's division was very weak. Not as far as the wrestling, because between Alundra Blaze and Bull Nakano, they had some amazing matches. One of the best matches I've seen live was them, and I can't say enough about those two. But unfortunately, that's about all they had.
Yeah, over in Japan, they had a really strong women's contingent. That's what a lot of the women that came over for that Survivor Series were from, was Japan. But to your point, with the women's division in WWE or WWF, it was here's Alundra and here's our flavor of the month.
Yep.
She's gone, or she gets the title, Alundra gets it back, new person, and just constantly rotating. And they were actually athletes. It wasn't the Playboy bunnies and divas that we end up getting, but there just was a lack of it, unlike how you had that little middle ground between Trish, Lita, Jazz, and all them, plus the divas. And now it's, I'd say 90% now more athletes compared to
Yes.
divas.
Yes, at that time, I seen that match at the Ice House. In fact, it was the WWF's last show at the Ice House, and maybe there was a half the seats were full, but they put on like a good 20 minutes solid just wrestling, and even with a controversial finish, and Jack Tunney came out, and it was just a really good match.
Yeah, they knew what
So
they were
we're going
doing.
to move on to there we go. 29 years ago in Tijuana, Mexico, El Hijo de Santo defeated Esperanto Jr. to win the WWA World Welterweight Championship. 26 years ago today, WCW Uncensored 95. This event was voted the worst major wrestling show of that year by Wrestling Observer newsletter fans. Fans would be given the shaft, as this was the ultimate surprise of Hogan's that ended up being not the debut of the Ultimate Warrior, but the debut of his bad clone, the Renegade. Also on that show, Blacktop Bully defeated Dustin Rhodes in a King of the Road match. This match was on a 53-foot flatbed trailer that had a cage built on it with the sections that the wrestlers had to get through and ding a bell at the end, all while the cage was taken for a drive through the beautiful Georgia area. I like this match because it was neat, looked good on TV, beautiful Georgia skyline. Most fans took a shot on it, but I thought for what it was, they did a pretty good job. Sean, what were your thoughts on that match?
Yeah, that one I thought was very underrated because, and it actually opened up the pay-per-view, but to find out later on that it was heavily cut apart and filmed a couple days beforehand, uh, and eventually ended up losing both Barry Darsow and Dustin Rhodes their jobs, was utterly ridiculous. Like, the match was on a pay-per-view called Uncensored, where everything was supposed to be legal, but because they drew some blood in this unsanctioned match, first of its kind, they both got fired. I don't get it. It's WCW.
And since they
Really
pre-taped it, why didn't they blur out maybe the blood or something? Like, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah, they could have corrected things or just had them redo something again. A very unique match. I don't know about the whole needing to crawl through haystacks and all this other stuff just to blow a horn, but we also have things like ambulance matches and buried alive matches. So I guess anything goes in that regards. And, bull rope matches or strap matches where you have to touch four corners. So blowing a horn, yeah, but just odd that Barry and Dustin ended up losing their jobs. However, at the same time, had they not lost their jobs, we might not have ever gotten Gold Dust.
That is true.
Dustin ended up going over to WWF after that.
And we were blessed to have it.
Yep.
Also on the card, Ming defeated Hacksaw Jim Duggan in a martial arts match. Yuck. Johnny B. Bad defeated Arn Anderson in a boxer versus wrestler match. The Nasty Boys defeated Harlem Heat in a Texas Tornado match. And Hulk Hogan defeated Vader in a leather strap match, even though Flair was the man tied to the strap at the end of the match. The rumored reason for this was because Hogan nor Vader wanted to do a clean job for the other.
Shocking.
21 years ago, WCW presented the final Uncensored. Norman Smiley and the Kiss Demon defeated Lenny Lane in Rave. Brian Knobs defeated 3 Count. in a 3-on-1 handicap match to win the WCW Hardcore Championship. The Harris brothers, Ron and Don, defeated the Mamalukes, Big Vito and Johnny the Bull, to win the WCW World Tag Team Championship. Dustin Rhodes defeated Terry Funk in a bull rope match. Sting defeated the Total Package and the Lumberjacks with Casts match. And Hulk Hogan defeated Ric Flair in a Yavapai Indian strap match.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And I totally remember Hogan and all that lead up always going, the Yappa Pie, Yappa Pie. And it's like, can you just say it's a strap match, you freaking moron? And hey, Dustin Rhodes was in a bull rope match with Terry Funk. So he got his job back with WCW all those years later. So that's what 6 years later he was back, and he didn't get fired for that one. So
no, he did not.
Never say never.
I don't think at that time they could, they really wanted to fire him because he was one of the top guys they had as far as wrestling ability.
Exactly.
20 years ago, WCW presented Monday Nitro. Eric Bischoff made an announcement that the next edition of Nitro, A Night of Champions, would be the last on the Turner's network. That wasn't the only bad news of the night, as the fans also had to sit through the last taping of Thunder. The main event of Thunder was Scott Steiner and Jeff Jarrett defeating Dustin Rhodes in a handicap match. 20 years ago,
I remember that episode where just all of a sudden Booker, as you see in this picture, he's on the ramp, and then there's a call in from Eric Bischoff, and he's talking about the future of WCW, and this is when they were trying to get Fusion Media to buy it. I think also we probably will talk about it closer in May, but I believe one of those last or second last WCW magazine that existed was also preparing for the demise of WCW, basically, and the purchase by Eric Bischoff, because they were advertising for a pay-per-view that was supposed to happen that didn't, called The Big Bang in May. And there was little details. I probably find them pictured later on, or I figure we're going to talk about maybe in May when it was supposed to happen. But yeah, it was just all preparing for this reset that was going to happen when WCW was going to be off for a while, and that's what he was announcing that night. Of course, we're going
to the reset was just kind of dumb. It would have been better if they just said, okay, there's a big battle royal tonight and the last 4 or 5 guys get championships. Going on, 20 years ago on Raw is War, Edge and Christian would win the WWF tag titles after defeating the Hardy Boys, only to lose them about an hour later to the Dudley Boys. Rhino and Spike Dudley both made their WWF debuts, and Raven defeated the Big Show to win the WWF Hardcore Championship. 19 years ago, at a SmackDown taping in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, William Regal defeated Diamond Dallas Page by submission to win the WWF European Championship. Also on the show was Rico, who would make his WWF main roster debut as the stylist to then tag team champions Billy and Chuck. And Kevin Nash and The Rock fought to a no contest. Post-match, the NWO got a new member, the returning X-Pac. 14 years ago on Raw, ECW champion Bobby Lashley became the first man, officially, to win the Master Lock Challenge by breaking out of Chris Masters' submission hold. On the same show, Edge won a 10-man last chance battle royal, last eliminating Ric Flair to enter the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 23. 10 years ago, Ring of Honor presented Manhattan Mayhem 4 from New York. Tommaso Ciampa defeated Grizzly Redwood. The All Night Express, Kenny King and Reed Titus defeated the Briscoes, Jay and Mark. The King of Wrestling, Chris Hero and Claudio Castagnino defeated the Latin American Exchange, Hernandez and Homicide. Davey Richards defeated Christopher Daniels in a Pure Wrestling Rules match. Under Pure Rules, competitors were limited to 3 rope breaks. And Eddie Edwards defeated Roderick Strong to win the ROH World Championship.
And just to think, a lot of these guys that were on that show, what was that? How many years ago? 10 years ago. A lot of them are taking up space on WWE programming now, including Tommaso Ciampa, Claudio Castagnoli, which is Cesaro, and of course you got Roderick Strong over there. Christopher Daniels is over on AEW. Eddie Edwards is over in Impact. So a lot of guys are still hanging around and doing their craft.
Yes. Always like Christopher Daniels. 8 years ago, TNA taped One Night Only, Hardcore Justice 2. This event would not air until 3.5 months later. We had Bad Influence. Christopher Daniels and Kazarian defeat Generation Me, Matt Jackson and Nick Jackson, in a $20,000 ladder match. Shark Boy won the 8-man hardcore gauntlet match. Bob Holly, James Storm, and Magnus defeated Aces and Eights, Doc or DOC, Mike Knox, and Wes Briscoe in the 6-man elimination tag team match. Joseph Park defeated Judas Messias in a Monsters Ball match. And Brother Runt and Jeff Hardy defeated Aces and Eights, Bully Ray and Devon in a tables match. Also on that night, they taped One Night Only Tournament of Champions 2013. The show featured a one-night tournament of past TNA World Champions. Bobby Roode would win the tournament. The losers were James Storm, Mr. Anderson, Samoa Joe, Jeff Hardy, Austin Aries, Angle, Bully Ray, and Stig. I would give a lot more in the delivery of Mr. Anderson, but my wife is studying for exams.
You mean Mr.
6 years ago? Yeah, you can do it.
Anderson.
6 years ago, WWE. Fantastic. 6 years ago, WWE announces that legendary Shuro or Puro, if someone can tell me how to pronounce that, that'd be great. Wrestler Tatsumi Fujinami, that's better, would be inducted into their Hall of Fame. Fujinami, a former WWF Junior Heavyweight Champion and the protege of Antonio Inoki, won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship 6 times and was a former NWA champ. It's a happy birthday, 34th, to April Jeanette Brooks, best known to wrestling fans as AJ Lee. Born April Jeanette Mendez in Union City, New Jersey, Brooks met then WWF diva Lita at age 12 in an autograph signing. After graduating from high school, April saved up money to support her family and enrolled in wrestling school. She would spend 6 months enrolled in New York University's Teach School of the Arts, then began working full-time and enrolled in a nearby wrestling school in 2007, training under Jay Lethal. Wrestling as Miss April, her and Jay Lethal won the co-promoted WSU National Wrestling Superstars King and Queen of the Ring tournament, defeating Janny and Danny Demento in the final. In May, she left WSU and vacated her half of the WSU tag titles for a shot at the WWE. She would attend the WWE tryout camp and sign with them in May of 2009 and start in FCW. She would hold the Queen's Crown in FCW and become the FCW Divas Champion. AJ Lee made her WWE television debut as a participant on the 3rd season of NXT, and she would finish 3rd with the most wins at 6. AJ and Caitlyn would make their main roster debuts together in May 2011 as the Chick Busters. Of course, she would go on to great success, holding titles, and even became the GM of Raw. And she did all of that in, 4 or 5 year span?
Yeah,
Something like that once she got to the WWE.
It was a very short span, and then she was in a relationship with John Cena on camera, Daniel Bryan, and ultimately Kane as well, and then CM Punk, and that became an actual marriage with her and Phil. I think she didn't last much longer after Phil left the WWE 7 years ago, but she finished out her contract before leaving, which wasn't much more. She's written a book. I just find it odd. You mentioned, and we showed a picture of her WWE appearance as a child or a teenager, crying, getting her autograph from Lita. And then you think about some interesting relationship histories where
Hmm.
the fact is CM Punk at one point was with Maria Kanellis, but then Lita, and then AJ Lee. So kind of weird little thing between those three
Hmm.
history wise and relationships. But yeah, uh,
Yeah.
I
And it's
wish
cool when you get to see some fans, people that were fans, actually become wrestlers. So that's quite neat to see.
it'd
We're
definitely
moving
be nice
on
if
to,
they
sorry,
both
go
came
ahead.
back. Sorry, it'd be nice if they both were able to find a way of coming back to WWE because AJ being a part of it and the women that are there now, there's some dream matches that are being left off the like on the floor that will never happen unless they can find a way of reconciling with the company.
I think at some point they will reconcile whether or not they ever, join them as far as wrestling again. I would not be surprised only because the trend seems to be retire at an earlier age, recoup yourself, and then go back and have either your swan song or try to have a career again. So we'll see what happens. March 20th, 38 years ago in MSG in New York City, WWF champion Bob Backlund defeated WWF IC champion Don Morocco in a Texas death match. 27 years ago, WWF presented WrestleMania 10. The tagline was 10 years in the making. 18,000 and change were in attendance, with only 200,000 homes watching on pay-per-view. That was down from 100,000 from the previous year. This would be the first WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan. It would feature 2 WWF championship belts, the first televised ladder match in company history, and the last afternoon pay-per-view event. And just moving on through here. If you would like to quickly run down the card, I would be more than happy with that.
For sure. Well, I was showing some pictures of with Shawn and Razor Ramon. Diesel had been kicked out of the arena at that time. I'm hearing on somebody's podcast, I heard that one of these sort of shots of pictures is most demanded picture of fans to get Razor Ramon to sign, even though he's on the receiving end of the splash. Of course, a tremendous opening with brother versus brother. Owen taking out his brother Brett in the starter of the match. Then culminated with Brett winning the title at the end of the night. But
Oh, you don't have the picture of Owen in the background.
no, I wasn't able to find that one. But if people joined us last night for Fantasy Warfare tournament, this one actually beat the came out top of the 16 that we did because of how much history and nostalgia is there. You had special guest referees in Piper and Hennig. You had 2 title matches uh, in a untraditional triangle sort of scenario where 2 people went against each other, and later on the winner had to go against somebody else, and that's why Brett had his match early. So there was guaranteed that both of them were going to have 2 matches. Nobody was coming in fresh as a daisy. And I mentioned that last night. Thankfully, it happened at that time, because if it was today and Brett and Luger went over the top rope together and you couldn't decide who was going to win the Royal Rumble, they were going to have this scenario that you had at WrestleMania 10. It was going to be a triple threat match, and here you go, Luger, Hart, and Yoko together. No Owen versus Brett. So we were kind of spoiled in this case by getting such a great card with a lot of downplay. Because if you see in behind this picture of Owen and Brett, that X representing WrestleMania 10 was the entrance. There was no flash, no LEDs, no all this stuff that we get today on a regular WWE show, and what we're going to see when they go to Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay in just a couple weeks. That's going to be a huge stage as well. And yeah, so different contrasts. And I bet you more people could remember stuff that happened on this show than any other recent WrestleManias.
I would 95% agree with that statement. Also on the card, I think Men on the Mission won the tag team champion belts from the Quebecers. Oh no, they didn't by count out, so they didn't win. And nothing else as far as championships were on that match, except of course Razor and Shawn Michaels in the Awesome Ladder match. We're going to move on now. 21 years ago on Raw is War, Triple H defeated The Rock and The Big Show in a triple threat match to retain the WWF Championship. After the match, Triple H received a shock from CEO Linda McMahon as she announced that the main event to WrestleMania would be a fatal four-way match pitting Triple H, The Rock, The Big Show, and the unretired Mick Foley. And on top of that, there would be a McMahon and Evie Wrestler's Corner. 13 years ago, WWE suspends Afa Anoa'i Jr. for 30 days following a violation of the WWE wellness policy. Afa Jr. had been only on WWE programming for a short while and would briefly join Randy Orton's legacy in late 2008. He would be released in February of 2009. Moving on to March 21st. 30 years ago, WCW New Japan presented WCW New Japan Super Show, aka Starrcade 91, from the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan. Some of the matches on the card were Jushin Thunder Liger defeated Akira Nogami to win the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. Arn Anderson and Barry Windham defeated Masa Sato and Masahiro Chono. The Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott, defeated Hashiri, Haas, and Kenzuki Sasaki to win the IWGP Tag Team Championship. The Great Muta defeated Sting, and the IWGP Heavyweight Champion Tatsumi Fujinami defeated WCW World Champion Ric Flair to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. In Japan, the NWA title and the WCW were not considered the same title. So the ending had Flair dumped over the top rope, which was a DQ for the WCW belt, but not for the NWA title. So the match continued, and Fujinami pulled out a victory for the Japan audience. This is another weird ending to a match due to the fact that this match was to be aired in North America the following month. Flair's WCW World title was not on the line, yet on the American version of the show, the match was considered a title versus title bout. Hopefully that is as clear as mud for you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
26 years ago, at a Monday Night Raw taping, a match that was cut from WrestleMania 10 due to time constraints took place. It was the Head Shrinkers, Fatu and Samu, Jeff Jarrett, Rick Martel, and IRS defeating the Smoking Guns, the 1-2-3 Kid, Sparky Plug, and Tatanka. The April 4th episode also featured the debut of Shawn Michaels' new talking segment, The Heartbreak Hotel.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll end up probably talking about that in future. This was when WWE was actually doing like 2 or 3 episodes of Raw in one sitting. That's why they were able to do the Heartbreak Hotel segment that didn't appear until April 4th. Meanwhile, this was done on March 20th or something.
Yes. Yes, I do believe. 23 years ago, WWF presented the SLAMMY Awards from the Westin Hotel in Chicago, Illinois. The show airing live on USA Network and was the last SLAMMY Awards until 2008. On this edition, some of the awards was the new sensation was Rocky Maivia. Match of the year was Bret versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 12. The best bow tie, no winner, but Owen Hart stole the SLAMMY. Lifetime Achievement Award went to Arnold Skoland, and the Miss Slammy went to Sable.
Great.
21 years ago today, ECW presented Living Dangerously. We saw Super Crazy defeat Yashiro Tajiri. RVD defeated Jerry Lynn to retain the ECW World Television Belt. Originally, the referee awarded the match entitled to Lynn. However, Lynn asked for 5 more minutes to get a clean winner and lost the match. Silly man. Spike Dudley and Nova defeated the Dudley Boys, and Nova was injured during the match and replaced by Sid Vicious. Taz defeated Sabu by technical submission to unify the ECW and FTW World Heavyweight Championships. Sabu passed out in the Taz mission to end the match. 10 years ago, TNA presented Destination X. We saw Frankie Kazarian defeat Brian Kendrick, the Amazing Red, and Christopher Daniels in the ladder match to become the #1 contender for the TNA X Division belt. The band, Scott Hall and Six Pack, defeated Kevin Nash and Eric Young, with Nash turning on Young at the end of the match. Matt Morgan and Hernandez defeated Beer Money Inc., Robert Roode, and James Storm to retain the TNA World Tag Team Championship. And AJ Styles and Abyss fought to a no contest for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. At the end of the match, Abyss chokeslammed Styles through the ring. There was a lot of post-match shenanigans, ending with Flair and Desmond Wolfe swallowed by the ring hole. Hogan and Abyss celebrated.
A lot of these guys are working for WWE right now.
Yes.
In that picture, you had Abyss, AJ, and Flair. And recently, Abyss, or Joseph Park, was with AJ Styles. And AJ Styles now is with Omos. Really bad booking right there. But Hogan, obviously, is with WWE. He's going to be doing his NWO induction this WrestleMania. Also co-hosting with Titus O'Neil. And Desmond Wolfe is Nigel McGuinness commentator. So, yeah, a lot of.
I'm predicting with the effects that they now have, that they can put 3D stuff and that. I believe that at the awards ceremony or at WrestleMania, sometime there'll be a spray paint of NWO that's going to go on the building, on the field, or somewhere. And if they don't do it, they drop the ball. 6 years ago today in Tijuana, Mexico, Pedro Aguayo Ramirez, best known to wrestling fans as Pero Aguayo Jr., dies after suffering a fatal spinal injury during a match for Mexican independent promotion, The Crash. He was just 35. Pedro was born July 23rd, 1979. His father was lucha legend Pero Aguayo. Pedro made his wrestling debut at age 15, was the leader of Rudo's stable Perros de Mal, or Dogs of Evil, in the mid-2000s. Pedro had 2 runs in AAA and wrestled for CMLL. He was the 95 Wrestling Observer Newsletter Rookie of the Year. In 2012, AAA Ray to Ray's winner won tag team championships with World Wrestling Association, CMLL, and AAA. Pedro had competed in 13 wager matches, such as hair versus hair or hair versus mask, in his career, winning them all. On March 20th, 2015, Aguayo suffered a cervical stroke during a match with Manic against Rey Mysterio and Extreme Tiger. The cervical stroke was caused by having a C1, C2, and C3 vertebrae broken. Even though there was concern that Aguayo had not been attended to in a timely manner and proper medical equipment was not available due to a previous injury, the coroner ruled it would have made no difference as the fractures killed him almost instantaneously. Less than a month after his death, the Mexican Senate Sports Commission introduced an initiative to regulate combat sports nationwide in the country, including a code of ethics, a consolidation of agencies, and granting federal licenses. Pereo Aguayo Jr. was posthumously inducted into the AAA Hall of Fame that summer. And today would have been the 114th birthday of the man known as the father of Lucha Libre, Salvatore Luthroth Gonzalez. Seen there, he was born in Coatlan, Jalisco, Mexico, and raised in Mexico City. Luthroth would discover wrestling at Liberty Hall in El Paso, Texas, falling in love with the sport. In 1933, Luthroth brought the sport of professional wrestling to his native Mexican, to his native Mexico, and formed his own promotion, Empresa Mexicana de Lucha Libre, with financial partner Francisco Amada. The promotion would consist of many masked superhero-style wrestlers and a fast action compared to the Americans. By the mid-50s, Luthroth passed on control of EML to his son Chavo. The company would join the National Wrestling Alliance and gain worldwide following. Now known as World Wrestling Council, the company still promotes weekly events to this day, marking CMLL the oldest promotion in professional wrestling. Luthroth died on September 6th, 1987. Moving on to March 22nd, 40 years ago in Greensboro, Paul Jones and the Masked Superstar defeated Ray Stevens and Ivan Koloff to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship.
Now, here's a little bit of maybe known fact to some of the fans watching, depending on how old of wrestling fans their fandom goes back. But are you aware of who the Masked Superstar is, Jonesy?
The Masked Superstar, I've been told before. I want to say it's Axe, but I honestly can't remember.
Yep, it is Axe.
Oh, there you go.
Demolition.
Yes. March 22nd, 40 years ago in Greensboro. Oh, no, I already said that one. 28 years ago, Brian Christopher and Scotty Flamingo defeated the Moondogs for the USWA Tag Team title. FYI, we don't normally include the USWA changes because how often some titles change hands. And that includes a lot of other belts and that are changed so often, we just don't mention them very often. But because of the name Scotty Flamingo and the Moondogs, I just had to squeeze that in.
Yeah, and it's not surprising that a lot of titles changed hands in USWA, and who some of the recipients were, considering if their last name was Lawler, they got a lot of volleying back and forth of titles. But yeah, as you saw, Scotty Flamingo, who became Johnny Polo, who became Raven in that picture with Grandmaster Sexay.
Mm-hmm. 22 years ago on Raw's War, Stone Cold Steve Austin defeated the Big Slow, Paul White, in his WWF in-ring debut. The opening segment of the show had Austin driving a beer truck down the aisle and treat Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, and The Rock to a beer bath. Of course, Vince McMahon showed everyone how to swim in the shallow puddle of beer. 17 years ago at ROH Night of Champions in Philly, Samoa Joe defeated Xavier by submission to win the ROH Championship, holding it for a record 645 days. 17 years ago, WWE presented its first ever draft lottery on Raw. Each general manager from Raw and SmackDown, Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman, each had a tumbler with the other show's roster. Each manager would pick 6 names from their bins. Any name picked out would be moved to the opposite show. Out of the 6 names picked by Bischoff, 1 name picked was Heyman. So Heyman quit because he did not want to work for Bischoff. My question is, why would Bischoff's name be in the drum in the first place if he is the general manager of the other show? This is partly why I stopped following a lot of the WWE, was because of this nonsensical storytelling. Sean, can you make sense of this?
Well, it kind of makes a little bit of sense because at the time of them battling, they're trying to be the superior show. But if you ended up getting drawn to go to the other show because everybody was fair game at that time, right? As long as you were, say, a Raw employee, were in Heyman's tumbler, and vice versa for Bischoff's. And if you happen to be drawn, in this case, you kind of lost your job as general manager, and that brand would have had to find a new general manager. And of course, then in this case, also Bischoff would have had sort of the last laugh on Heyman for taking his job and basically giving him a demotion, because he would have had to find Heyman a job, whether it was selling popcorn or being a manager or something, but he was not going to be a general manager like he was just moments before. So it's kind of to dink
It
around with.
makes sense in the wrestling world, but I still don't like that. I think it's dumb. It's like putting a coach's like in there. It just makes no sense to me.
Oh, I get
But
that.
it does make sense in the wrestling world. So moving on, Batista and Ric Flair defeated Booker T and RBD to win the World Tag Team Championship. Chris Benoit defeated Rhino to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. And Eddie Guerrero defeated Triple H by DQ to retain the WWE Championship. 11 years ago on TNA Impact, Jeff Jarrett defeated Mick Foley in a no DQ career versus career match. With the loss, Foley was fired from TNA. Of course, he wasn't really fired. He was just given a 4-month break because TNA was quickly using up his contracted number of matches. On his way out, Foley punches Bubba the Love Sponge and legitimately bloodies his nose and gives him a black eye. Of course, he would apologize later to Bubba, and everything was cool. 10 years ago at a SmackDown taping, Wade Barrett defeated Kofi Kingston to win the WWE IC Championship. March 23rd, 37 years in Singapore, Ric Flair defeated Harley Race to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship 3 days after he lost the title to Race in New Zealand. Neither of the title changes are recognized by the NWA or WWE. Fortunately for them, they are recognized by us here at This Week in Wrestling History. 29 years ago in Memphis, Brian Christopher defeated Jimmy Valiant to win the USWA Southern Heavyweight Championship for his first of 25 glorious reigns.
Shocking. A Lawler with
Yeah,
a title
shocking.
in USWA.
I do believe actually the square is. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to do kind of a joke. The square root of 25, or sorry, the square root of Lawler's number of championships equals Brian Christopher's reigns as champion, or something like that. 24 years ago, WWF presented WrestleMania 13. This Mania is the lowest buy rate for a WrestleMania ever. Pre-WW Network, of course, and the building wasn't a sellout. WrestleMania 13, which was the tagline was Heat, and it was on March 23rd, 1997 at the Rosemont Horizon, and approximately 8,000 and change attended. The commentators, some of the special ones was Honky Tonk for the IC match and Shawn Michaels for the main event. And if you would like to go down through the matches, that would be swell.
Yeah, if you can see on the screen right now, those who are watching the video version, I have a somebody put together a collage with all of them on there, and you had the Chicago Street Fight with LOD against the Nation. They also had Ahmed Johnson with LOD on that one. They used everything but the kitchen sink, but they might have even had the kitchen sink there. Of course, Owen and the Bulldog defended against Vader and Mankind. There was a four-way tag team with the Blackjacks, Headbangers, Furnace and LaFon, and the Godwins. Of course, we also saw the Sultan, or Rikishi, as we've found out later on, taking on Rocky Maivia for the IC title. Rocky Johnson showed up. There was Triple H against Goldust. And then the two bigger matches of the card consisted of Sid challenging Undertaker for the championship. And of course, the one that people remember the most, Ken Shamrock being the referee for Steve Austin and Bret Hart in the double change of attitudes. That was the double switch where Austin went from heel to babyface, and Brett went from babyface to heel, and you had the blood just dripping down Steve's face. Might be underrated, but has some standout matches for sure.
Absolutely. And when I hear the Sultan, I just think of the headgear he did have, the big candied kiss. I do wonder on that new WWE show that they're going to be doing, going around and finding artifacts of old WWF and blah, 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 if that might show up. So we're moving on. 20 years ago, WWF announces via press release that they bought WCW and finally crushed the competition. 17 years ago at a SmackDown taping, there's the cell of WCW. I actually liked that logo and the set of when they used the logo when it opened up on Nitro.
It's the exploding vagina.
Well, that too, but I still like it. I think it's a really just a nice looking logo.
I kind of like the one that WWE ended up doing after they ended up buying it.
Yeah, that one was simpler.
Yeah.
But it was sleek. It was nice too. 17 years ago at a SmackDown taping, Kurt Angle announces he's the new general manager of SmackDown, replacing Paul Heyman, who got screwed. Also on the show, Bradshaw introduces his new gimmick, John Bradshaw Layfield. Yeah. 13 years ago today, Hiroshi Tanahashi defeated Giant Bernard to win the 2008 New Japan Cup and an IWGP Heavyweight Championship match. Tanahashi would fail in his title match against Shinsuke Nakamura a week later. And March 24th, 30 years ago, WWF presented another WrestleMania, this one being number 7. And the tagline was Stars and Stripes Forever. Their pay-per-view audience would drop from 160,000 from the previous year, and they moved the event from the 92,000 LA Memorial Coliseum to the LA Sports Arena next door. Some say this move was due to security reasons, and others say it was because the ticket sales were slow. No matter where the venue was, this event did have some fantastic matches in it. I'm sorry, and I'll get to you in just a second. And the date of that was, of course, in 1991 on March 24th. Quickly going through all the stuff here. Some of the commentators on this, Duggan, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which actually wasn't a horrible commentator for the Rockers' Haku Barbarian match. And Alfred Hayes was for the Bossman, Mr. Perfect. And Regis Philbin was also on the commentating team for the Hogan Slaughter match. Of course, Alex Trebek was there for doing interviews, and Marlon Maples. And I think Alex Trebek might have also announced one of the matches. I honestly, yes, he did. The main event, there it is. And that's about it. Oh, and of course, Willie Nelson did the national anthem. And if you'd like to go through the matches and, the celebrities, also there was a bunch. There was George Steinbrenner, Paul McGuire, Macaulay Culkin, Donald Trump, Beverly D'Angelo, and Henry Winkler.
Quite the arraignment of celebrities that were there. So yeah, as you see on the screen, another montage of the events that happened. And yeah, I think it was probably a lot of low ticket sales. It didn't help that the Gulf War was happening, and the story that they had going on with Slaughter. He had a lot of death threats to his himself and his family during this time of being an Iraqi sympathizer. But we had Tenryu and Katao end up beating Demolition. Though this picture does not have the proper version of Demolition. It was actually Smash and Crush. Ted DiBiase and Virgil went against each other. It was supposed to be Roddy Piper, but he ended up in a motorcycle accident and was in Virgil's corner. Lame match of Earthquake and Valentine, but weeks beforehand, Brutus Beefcake showed up in a mask that was the Mariner. They found a name for him. And he was rescuing people from Earthquake, and then that went nowhere. He didn't even show up there. Nasty Boys beat the Hart Foundation for the tag team titles. That was the Hart Foundation's last run as tag team champions. LOD destroyed Power and Glory in no time flat. I actually like Power and Glory as a team. It's a shame
Yes,
what happened.
they had actually a really good finisher.
Oh yeah, and some I think FTR are using that one over in AEW. The Rockers had Face of Fear. There was the I'm trying to remember if it was Power Slam or if it was Full Nelson challenge. Full Nelson versus Full Nelson with the Warlord and Davey Boy Smith. The blindfold match with Jake and Rick Martel. Of course, Tito Santana made his yearly appearance and won against the Mountie. Dino Bravo and Texas Tornado. Bossman ended up not getting the Intercontinental title on his last man of the Heenan family to go after. Heenan had been tormenting the Bossman with Yo Mama jokes the whole time. And amazing. The streak began with Undertaker taking out Jimmy Superfly Snuka in his debut WrestleMania match. And of course, the two big matches were career ending match with Warrior and Savage. One of my favorite matches, definitely. Everybody knows I'm a Savage mark, but you had Elizabeth make the save when Sherry turned on him, and then of course Slaughter losing the title to Hogan and the flag waving, and everybody going home happy, and it was a big my Miss American Pie moment and a huge amount of patriotism, which obviously was needed at that time with the Gulf War going on, but yeah, it was fully USA'd.
Yes, this was one of my favorite WrestleManias. I think it had a great mix of great matches, breakout matches, some snores, but all in all, especially when it was almost like a co-main event. Uh, the Hogan Slaughter match I thought was actually pretty good, and the lead up was one of the best as far as I think Hogan got another good run for himself with going with Slaughter, because Slaughter was just, he hit a home run every time he went out there. Some of his, speeches would go on a little too damn long, but he did a great job of coming off as just a complete ass.
Yeah, and I think it's probably through WWE, but it's definitely on YouTube. You can actually find Slaughter and Hogan sitting together on a couch. It's happened within the last couple of years, and they're watching that match and commentating it or giving memories of that time. But just they were very timely in what was going on in the world at that time. And I remember not being able to see the pay per view when it happened because it was during a time where pay per view was like, do you spend the money? Don't you? But my geography teacher, Mr. Gooder, had the satellite and recorded it on VHS and brought it into our geography class. And that was a whole week's worth of geography was watching
Nice.
WrestleMania 7. So it was pretty
Yes, a
cool.
definite shout out to Mr. Gooder, that teacher, fantastic teacher, who actually made me a better student, or at least just for his course, but a better student. 25 years ago, WCW presented Uncensored. About 9,000 were in attendance for this shit show of a main event. Its pay-per-view numbers were up, but it would be voted the worst major show of the year by Wrestling Observer Newsletter for the second straight year. I'm just gonna kind of skip the whole show because really this event wasn't the greatest. The main event was just yuck. If you'd like to kind of go through kind of this match and what the fuck was going on there.
Yeah, as you see with the picture, it was the Doomsday Cage match. There was a coalition to end Hulkamania, It consisted of like the Dungeon of Doom and the Horseman, and then they brought in the Ultimate Solution, or whatever you want to be called. I think they had to change the name because they got reference to like the Holocaust, so they had to change that up. I forget what name they settled on fully. And then the Gangsta showed up as well, and that was just Zeus, Tiny Lister, who just recently passed away, as they were like the last two bosses. It was almost like going through a real life version of Double Dragon, because
Yes.
it was like having the Mega Powers, Hogan and Savage, having to go through the streets or these cages. And they started at the top, and you can see on the right hand side all the little staircases there. But they started up at the top, and they went against two guys. And then they had to escape that one to go to the middle tier, which, though, that was divided into two smaller cages. And they had to go against some people and get through that one. Luger, I think, and Flair were down in the middle one. And then they made their way down to the bottom cage. But then somehow they ended up out of the whole thing, over to the main ring, battled, and somehow made their way back to this monstrosity cage where the ring is there in the bottom. And then that's where the Gangster and the Solution guys showed up. Just a cluster, and everybody escaped their cages and came down. And so it was a big melee that got saved by Brutus Beefcake arriving with aluminum frying pans that helped Hogan and Savage magically win this match, which I thought escaping the cage would have ended up allowing that to be the end, but then they made it back. And yeah, it's a cluster that if you want to have your mind blown, go look it up.
It is a fun match to watch because of the commentating, because they don't know what even is going on. So I will say, as a fan, especially if I was in attendance, I would not have been disappointed of the show, simply for the reason of that was a cool looking structure they built. It's just they didn't think the whole thing through. But I think the construction workers that put that sucker together did a fantastic job. 19 years ago in Japan, Masahiro Chono and Hiroshi Tenzan defeated Yugi Nagata and Manabu Nakanishi in a tournament final to win the vacated IWGP Tag Team Championship. And look at, oh man, so that's some cool looking shit. I wish sometimes I wish I would have watched a lot more of the Japanese wrestling and all that, because that's just awesome outfits, man.
Yeah, tag team, they named themselves Cho-Ten.
Oh, yes. 18 years ago on Raw, Chief Morley declares himself one half of the World Tag Team Champions when William Regal is stripped of his half of the titles due to what was thought to be a stomach virus, but turned out to be a serious heart condition that would keep him out of action for more than a year. 18 years ago, former WCW World Champion Bill Goldberg signs with the WWE. It's a happy 56th birthday to the officially retired Lord of Darkness, Mark William Calloway, the Undertaker. And just a little bit on him, the Phenom was born in Houston, Texas on March 24th, 1965. He is the youngest of 5 boys. Before becoming the Dead Man, he enrolled at Texas Wesleyan University, where he majored in sports management and played as a center for the Rams in the 85-86 season. Calloway would drop out of college, and after deciding not to play basketball in Europe, he would focus on pro wrestling. Of course, he would go on to great success. Interestingly, his first match was under a mask and ring name Texas Red. He would be accompanied to the ring by Percy Pringle and wood wrestler Bruiser Brody. Of course, Percy Pringle would eventually become Paul Bearer. Yeah, and it's a happy, of course, or sorry, it's the same guy. Happy birthday to the American Badass.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting where as you said, Percy was part of his debut match, and Brody. There's a story on one of the documentaries of WWE just recently, and Brody just beat the hell out of him, and that's why Percy was out there, just to direct him, because he was green as grass, and then to also know that Mark Calloway, or Mark Callis, was one of the original Heyman guys as well, and yeah, a lot of history before he even donned the
Oh,
black.
absolutely, and some of that, especially Percy Pringle being his his first manager, it's foreshadowing in a story, kind of looking at what will be. It is cool. And finally, we're going to March 25th. 45 years ago in Toronto, Ontario, WWF champion Bob Backlund and AWA World Heavyweight champion Nick Bockwinkel fought to a double countout. This was the first ever singles meeting between the AWA and WWF World Champions. 19 years ago, the WWF held its first ever draft. This was the brand extension draft. It was essentially to roster split, dividing the WWF supersize roster to separate shows, being Raw and, of course, SmackDown. The roster split would become effective on April 1st episode of Raw. There was also matches on that card. We had Taz defeat Mr. Perfect. Booker T and Christian defeated Diamond Dallas Page and Edge. NWO Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and X-Pac defeated Hulk Hogan and The Rock by DQ. And Triple H defeated Chris Jericho and Stephanie McMahon Helmsley in a triple threat match to retain the undisputed WWF Championship. With the loss, Stephanie was banished from the WWF. Banished for 4 months, of course, as she became the GM of SmackDown. Banishments and retirements do not last long in the wrestling world.
Not really. And as you see up here on the screen, this is what the results were of the draft after it was done. And it was Vince and Ric Flair doing the drawings that year. But you had WWF champion Triple H and Jazz on the both rosters, because they were champions, and free agent was Stone Cold. And then everybody else divided over to their respective shows, which is surprising because you see on this list Undertaker is on Raw, but I remember Taker being more of a SmackDown guy
Yes.
for most of his career, and he kind of established himself there. But what people don't kind of realize is that, like people might think A show, B show, and all this other stuff, but before they officially did this whole thing, they were already doing it on house shows, because you would have one group go to
Yes.
the shows, say, in Michigan, while others were in Ohio or in Pennsylvania, and then by Monday they would all meet up in Ohio for Monday and Tuesday for Raw and SmackDown tapings, and they just intermix at that time, but they had different directions. In this case, this allowed them to establish these guys on one show, these guys on another, and instead of having Monday and Tuesday or Monday, Thursday, whatever day SmackDown was on, seeing Stone Cold, The Rock, Angle, Undertaker, all on both those days, you only saw them on the one day on TV, and it allowed a lot of the people underneath them to end up rising up. You eventually had the SmackDown 6 with Edge and Benoit and Christian, Angle, and all them. They probably would not have been able to be successful had it been without the roster splits.
Yeah, I agree. Me personally, I didn't like the split, and the only reason why was now there's more wrestling to watch. And I know some people are like, "What are But I don't want to. I didn't have time to watch Raw or the attention span to watch Raw and SmackDown. So of course and it was kind of good for them. They forced people to kind of choose which one they were going to watch. And then of course when they came to town, it's like, okay, I hope the Raw people come, because if it's SmackDown, I'm not going to know what the fuck's going on. But London was lucky, of course, and always has been lucky. London, Ontario, I'm talking about. our hometown, because they would pretty much always get the card from Toronto, because it would be Toronto and then London was the next day. So usually there was really good shows there.
Yeah, and the thing is, like you said, there was just so much wrestling to watch. Being able to split it off like that, you didn't have to watch Monday and Thursday to keep in line with what Chris Jericho was doing that week. You'd only have to watch, say, Monday if he was on Raw, and tune in the following Monday. So you didn't have to worry, oh, what did I just miss?
It was good that they, of course, started doing the recap shows for those that didn't want to watch everything. Moving on, because we're almost done, folks. 10 years ago, Kurt Angle was arrested in Grand Forks, North Dakota, after failing a field sobriety test and allegedly driving while intoxicated.
There he is.
9 years ago, Progress Wrestling debuts with Chapter 1 in the beginning from the Garage in London, England. The Garage is a well-known venue in London and was a good fit for this strong-style wrestling with a punk rock vibe. The promotion put in an emphasis on using wrestlers from the United Kingdom, only occasionally using imports. Progress was established in 2011 by comedian Jim Smallman and events and comedy promoter John Briley. Progress Championship semifinals included El Ligro, Colossus Kennedy, Mike Mason, Colt Cabana, Marty Scurll, Zack Sabre Jr., Nathan Cruz would become Progress Wrestling's first champion, and nice logo. See, I'd wear a shirt that has that.
And
8
Smash
years
Wrestling
ago,
actually did some cross promotion cards with them. Last what was it, SummerSlam 2019, when it was in Toronto. Progress and WXW and a couple others. The one from China all did a weekend with Smash, and they did like 8 shows combined over 4 days.
and just before we get to our last story, where is it that people can go to find pro wrestling tees?
Oh, for our stuff, yeah.
Well,
Pro
whether it's
Wrestling
our
Tees.
stuff or just wrestling tees,
Oh,
where would the best place to go? Because I might actually
okay.
look for that Progress shirt. I really like that.
Yeah, well, you can probably find Progress Wrestling or any of your favorite wrestlers, along with Scumbags Wrestling t-shirts. You see the 4 designs we have at ProWrestlingTees.com. And if you're looking for our stuff, it's ProWrestlingTees.com/Scumbags Wrestling.
And of course, you are supporting a lot of things in this, and one of the things is entrepreneurship, and of course, the local artist. The guy that did that, very talented, fantastic look to it.
Yeah,
So
Nigel Lewis did the comic book version, and the money, any sales from that one, are going to Stevens Wrestling Journey for Curie Malformation in Children's Hospital in Toronto. Stevens a
fantastic.
huge wrestling fan, 10 years old, and yeah, definitely need to support him.
And finally, 8 years ago today, Matt Hardy and Rebecca Reyes, who wrestled as Reba Sky, announced they're getting married. The couple would get married in October and now have 3 sons with the first names Maxell, Wolfgang, and Bartholomew. Or Bartholomew. I don't think the Yule is in there, but great names, great names. So, of course, that's the end. This Week in Wrestling is compiled from the vast land of Google, Wikipedia, CagesideSeats.com, and most importantly, from fans and journalists that had front row seats to history.
And of course, our banter is filled with our own
I think it's
memories.
starting to do a little hail here in Niagara Falls, it sounds like.
Oh, not surprised. I think we're supposed to get some stuff like that here in London, thunderstorm potentially, and rainy all weekend. But yeah, thank you for taking us through that trip through history. You just sent me a little while ago next week's show, So I'll be looking through the internet for our visuals later on tonight. Be sure to join Stephen and myself as we run down some of the week in wrestling with the Scumbags Wrestling Podcast on at 8 p.m. We'll look back at Fastlane, probably fast version of that, because there was only a few things of note. They're building towards WrestleMania 37 happening in 2 weeks. And of course, we will recap everything that was going on with the Ontario Indie March Madness tournament that we run every day on our Facebook page, 7 a.m. and 12, give or take a little bit of time due to our work schedule. But we are breaking down 64 talent from all of over Ontario. Some are from Michigan, some are from Buffalo, but they worked in Ontario, so they're in there. And we are starting to, today we started round number 3, and we will culminate on April 1st with crowning our winner, which also happens to be a podcast day. So make sure you get in there and do your votes. Check back on some of our prior posts, because there's some amazing talent that cut some really good promos just to entertain the fans and maybe garner some votes along the way. But yeah, definitely look at.
I gotta say that Pretty Ricky Wild blows me away. He's pretty damn good on doing that stuff.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Pretty Ricky comes up with. I'm expecting a video any day now, because his third round is actually a triple threat, because he tied with Shiloh, and there's bound to be a
Yes, that
video.
should be quite heated because Shiloh also fired back. I think the promo was a little rough, but it was very amusing.
Yeah, so definitely tune into our Facebook page and check that out. We're also doing Fantasy Warfare Tournament. Last night we did the 16 of 32 WrestleManias. 4 got put to the wayside, but we got 32 WrestleManias we're looking at. We did the first 16. Next week we'll do 16 more. We're going to try and find what was the best WrestleMania. WrestleMania 10 came out from the bracket so far, and I don't know what will come out to face it, but we'll see what happens next week. Anything else that I forgot and missed before I say thank you?
No, I would like to say if anyone would like to write in or whatever, I'm interested in hearing other people's arena stories, especially the older arenas and house shows that they went to, what they experienced, what it was like. A lot of my memories is the stuff that was like on the walls, like this behind me, SummerSlam '89, I think it is. That what used to be up in the London Gardens halls and stuff like that. I'd like to hear more stories about that stuff.
That'd be awesome. So yeah, definitely check us out. It's running along the bottom, scumbagswrestling@gmail.com. Our Facebook page, always send us a message. That way, probably the quickest way you can get in touch with me. Instagram and Twitter, we're available. And just use the hashtags Fantasy Warfare, FTW, This Week in History, TWIH. We are scumbags. We'll find it. We'll bring up your stories. If you want to join us and share, we'll include you somehow in this. But yeah, we always want some fan interaction. And we appreciate you watching on YouTube and Facebook and listening to us on any of our platforms. We're like on 10 different ones, including Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. We're part of the Ontario Indie Wrestling Podcast Network here in Ontario, and the Johners Podcasting Network over in the UK. So we're here, we're there, we're everywhere. And you can also be prepared for the Scumbags Prediction League, where you're going to win some prizes, as long as you want to follow along with pay-per-views and make some picks. So we're out of here. We've rambled on for a little bit longer with plugging stuff, but that's all good.
I gotta start to learn to look at that clock a little sooner and go, oh, I gotta start speeding stuff up.
Yeah, because we want to be about an hour with your time at lunch. But thank you for joining us, and we will see you later on tonight for the Scumbags Wrestling Podcast.